Midnight Station, Season 1, Chapter 1. The station that wasn't there. Rain hammered against the windshield with a steady, relentless rhythm. The kind of rain that seemed to swallow sound itself. Ethan Carter tightened his grip on the steering wheel as another flash of lightning illuminated the deserted highway stretching endlessly before him. 11:47 p.m. The glowing digits on his dashboard clock stared back at him. 32 years old, divorced, recently unemployed, and driving nowhere in particular. 3 months earlier, Ethan had imagined his life would look very different. He had spent 7 years building a career in software consulting, 6 years trying to save a marriage that had already ended in everything but paperwork, and countless nights convincing himself that if he just worked harder, if he just endured a little longer, things would somehow return to normal. They hadn't. The divorce papers were signed, the apartment was empty, his savings account was shrinking, and tonight, he had simply gotten into his old Honda Civic and started driving. No destination, no plan, just miles of wet asphalt and a desperate need to outrun the silence waiting for him back home. A bolt of lightning split the sky. The engine coughed. Once, twice, then died. Ethan cursed. No, 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 no. Come on. He turned the key. Nothing. Again. Only the weak clicking of a battery struggling against inevitability. Rain pounded harder. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. He leaned back against the seat and closed his eyes. Of course, he muttered bitterly. Why wouldn't this happen tonight? His phone sat in a cup holder. No signal. Not even a single bar. He opened the map application. The screen spun uselessly. Unable to load. Wonderful. He was stranded somewhere in rural Pennsylvania, in the middle of a thunderstorm, just before midnight, without cell service and with a dead car. Ethan grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. Cold rain soaked through his clothes instantly. The highway was deserted. No headlights. No passing trucks. Nothing. Only darkness. And trees. Endless walls of black pine trees swaying violently in the wind. Then, he saw it. A light. Far away. Faint. Golden. Steady. At first he assumed it was a farmhouse. But as lightning flashed again, the shape became clearer. It wasn't a house. It was a building. Long, narrow, old-fashioned, with a peaked roof. And beside it, railroad tracks. Ethan frowned. Tracks. Out here. He had driven for almost 2 hours without crossing a single railway line. Yet there they were. Rust-colored steel disappearing into the forest. The light flickered once, then remained steady. He hesitated. Every instinct told him this was strange, but spending the night inside a dead car in a storm sounded considerably worse. He started walking. Mud clung to his shoes. Branches scraped against his jacket. Thunder rolled overhead. And with each step, the building seemed to emerge more clearly from the darkness. An old train station. Its wooden walls looked weathered by decades of rain and neglect. Paint peeled from every surface. Vines climbed the support beams. And hanging above the entrance was a faded sign. Midnight Station. Ethan stopped. He had never heard of it, but something about the station unsettled him. Not because it looked abandoned, but because it didn't. Worn yellow light spilled from the windows. Someone was inside. He approached cautiously. The station clock hanging above the doorway read, 12:13. Its hands motionless. Frozen. Ethan pushed open the door. A small brass bell chimed overhead. Inside, the air felt strangely warm. Too warm. The room smelled faintly of old books, dust, and coal smoke. Wooden benches lined the walls. Suitcases sat neatly stacked in corners. A newspaper rested on a table. Its date read, October 14th, 1978. Ethan blinked. That couldn't be right. Then, he heard a voice. You made it just in time. Ethan turned. Behind a polished ticket counter sat an elderly man. Thin, pale, wearing a dark uniform that looked decades out of date. Silver spectacles rested low on his nose. He smiled politely, as though Ethan were an expected guest. Sorry, Ethan said. My car broke down. I was hoping maybe there's a phone here. The man folded his hands. There is not. No cell service. None. Internet. No. A mechanic. No. Ethan sighed. Fantastic. The old man tilted his head. You appear troubled. I lost my job. Recently divorced. My car just died. So yes. I guess troubled is accurate. The man nodded slowly. Interesting. What is? The station often appears to trouble people. Appears?
That's an odd way to put it. The old man simply smiled. Outside, thunder rumbled. Then, a sound. Faint, distant, a whistle. Long, low, echoing through the forest. Ethan looked toward the windows. Was that a train? Indeed. But I didn't see any active tracks. Most people don't. The ticket clerk stood, walked toward the window, and stared into the darkness. It arrives every night. At precisely 12:13, Ethan glanced toward the frozen clock. You're joking. The man turned. For the first time, his smile disappeared. I never joke about the train. Silence. Rain tapped softly against the glass. Then the clerk spoke again. His voice quieter now, almost sympathetic. You may wait here until morning. You may leave. Or. He opened a drawer, removed a small paper ticket, and placed it gently on the counter. You may board. Ethan stared at the ticket. Board where? The old man looked past him, toward the dark woods beyond the station, and whispered, That depends. On what? The clerk adjusted his spectacles, and met Ethan's eyes. On whether you're willing to discover why the station chose to appear to you tonight. Then, another whistle, much closer, much louder, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of steel wheels moving slowly across tracks that, moments ago, Ethan could have sworn were empty. Something was coming, and whatever it was almost here. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, The Last Passengers. The whistle screamed through the night. Closer now, close enough that Ethan could feel it vibrate in his chest. The rain outside had begun to weaken, falling in a gentle mist against the station windows. The forest beyond was little more than shifting shadows, and from somewhere within those shadows, a light emerged. At first, it was only a faint glow, then another, and another. 2 bright lamps cut through the darkness, slowly growing larger. Ethan stepped toward the window. What the hell? The old ticket clerk remained perfectly still, hands folded neatly behind his back. Watching, waiting. The train rolled into view. Black, ancient. Its metal sides gleamed with rainwater. Steam hissed from beneath its wheels. Its engine looked decades older than anything Ethan had ever seen outside of a museum. Yet somehow, it moved silently. Too silently. The wheels turned. The pistons pumped. Steam escaped in white clouds. But the deafening mechanical roar Ethan expected never came. Only silence. And the occasional mournful whistle. The train slowed, finally stopping directly beside the platform. Every carriage window glowed with warm amber light, and inside, people, dozens of them, sitting quietly, reading newspapers, looking out windows, holding suitcases, talking softly, as if they were simply waiting for a routine journey. Ethan swallowed. They're real. The clerk adjusted his spectacles. They believe they are. What does that mean? The old man ignored the question. The train stops for 7 minutes. Passengers may board. Passengers may leave. And then, it moves on. Moves on where? To places few remember. Ethan stared. You keep talking like this is normal. For me, it is. The station clock still read 12:13. Frozen. Unchanging. Then, a carriage door opened. With a soft metallic click, several passengers stepped onto the platform. A woman in a blue dress carrying a leather handbag, a teenage boy wearing headphones from the early 2000s, an elderly gentleman dressed in a brown suit from another era. No one seemed frightened. No one seemed confused. They simply wandered the station as though they had visited many times before. And then Ethan noticed her. A little girl, perhaps 8 years old, standing near a bench, holding a stuffed rabbit. She wore a yellow raincoat. Her dark hair hung damply around her shoulders. She looked directly at Ethan, smiled, and walked over. Hi. Ethan hesitated. Hi. First time. He nodded. I guess. She tilted her head. They're always nervous the first time. The people who arrive. The people who don't know why they came. Ethan frowned. Do you know why you're here? She hugged the rabbit tightly. I'm waiting for my mommy. How long have you been waiting? The little girl glanced toward the train. A long time. Days. She shook her head. Years. Ethan felt a chill. What's your name? Emily. And your mommy? Sarah. Do you know your last name? She smiled sadly.
I forgot. A sudden gust of cold air swept through the station. Ethan looked toward the wall beside the ticket counter. There was a bulletin board, covered with papers, photographs, announcements, and posters. One poster immediately caught his attention. Missing person Emily Harrison, age 8. Last seen, June 12, 2011. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. He looked back. Emily was still standing there, still smiling, still clutching the rabbit. Exactly the same face, exactly the same child. Impossible. No, there had to be another explanation. Someone was playing a trick. It had to be. Then he heard another voice. Low, calm, male. You shouldn't look too closely. Ethan turned. A man sat alone on a nearby bench. Mid-40s. Dark coat, trimmed beard, tired eyes. There was something strangely familiar about him. The man folded his newspaper. Ethan noticed another poster hanging above him. Missing since 2018. Michael Donovan, age 44. The photograph matched perfectly. The man sitting before him was the missing man. Ethan stepped backward. What is this? The man sighed. The same question I asked. The same question everyone asks. And eventually, he looked toward the train. You stop asking. Emily suddenly waved. The conductor is coming. A tall figure emerged from the train, dressed in a dark uniform, face hidden beneath the brim of his cap. He walked slowly down the platform, checking watches, observing passengers, saying nothing. Then, the station speakers crackled to life. Static filled the room, followed by a voice, calm, mechanical, emotionless. Attention passengers. The midnight station thanks you for your patience. Departure in 3 minutes. Please have your tickets ready. Ethan's breathing quickened. He reached into his jacket pocket, simply to steady himself, and froze. His fingers touched paper. Slowly, carefully, he pulled it out. A ticket, old, yellowed, printed in faded black ink. Passenger, Ethan Carter. Destination, unknown. Departure time, 12:13 a.m. Ethan stared at it, speechless. Then he looked toward the missing man. The man met his gaze, and whispered, "You should decide quickly, because once you hear your name." The station speakers crackled again, and somewhere beyond the windows, the whistle sounded once more, long, low, patient, waiting. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Forgotten Ticket. The paper trembled slightly between Ethan's fingers. Old, yellowed, fragile, as if it had spent decades hidden inside a forgotten drawer. Yet only moments ago, it hadn't been there. He was certain of that. He would have noticed. He always emptied his pockets before driving. Keys, wallet, phone, nothing else. Certainly not an antique train ticket bearing his own name. Passenger, Ethan Carter. Departure, 12:13 a.m. Destination, unknown. Ethan swallowed. No one answered. Emily sat quietly on the bench, swinging her legs beneath her yellow raincoat. The bearded man unfolded his newspaper again. The ticket clerk polished his spectacles, almost as if this happened every night, almost as if they had seen this countless times before. Ethan approached the counter. "What is this?" The old man looked up. "A ticket. I can see that. How did I get it?" "You received it." "From who?" The clerk smiled. "The station." Ethan laughed nervously. "No. Seriously. I'm tired. I've been driving for hours. My car breaks down. I walk into a station that probably belongs in some history museum. Now I somehow have a train ticket in my pocket. This has to be some kind of prank." The clerk said nothing. Instead, he pointed toward the station clock. Still frozen. 12:13. Never moving. Never changing. "The station gives tickets to those invited. I wasn't invited. Were you not?" Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" The old man leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, 3 months ago, you sat alone in your apartment. You stared at divorce papers. You looked at a bottle of whiskey. And you asked a question." Ethan's face paled. "How do you know that?" The clerk's expression softened. "You asked, if I disappeared tonight, would anyone notice?" Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Ethan felt cold. Very cold. Because he remembered saying it. Not aloud. Not to anyone else. Only to himself. In an empty room. On a rainy night, after too many drinks, he stepped back. "Who are you?" The clerk adjusted his glasses. "I simply sell tickets." Another whistle echoed outside. Closer. Patient. Waiting. The station speakers crackled. Static hissed through hidden vents. Then the voice returned. Calm. Mechanical. Unnaturally clear. "Attention, passengers. Departure in 2 minutes. Passengers are reminded. There are rules." The room became silent. Even Emily stopped swinging her legs. The voice continued. Rule 1. Do not ask where the train is going. Rule 2. Do not remain between carriages. Rule 3. If someone knows your future, do not listen. Static. Then, silence. Ethan stared. What kind of rules are those? The bearded man folded his newspaper. The kind you obey. Or regret. You've ridden this train. The man nodded, more times than I can count. Why don't you leave? His tired eyes drifted toward the windows. Because I missed my stop. Ethan frowned. What stop? The man smiled sadly. The same one everyone misses. Emily stood, holding her rabbit. My mommy says people never leave because they're afraid. Afraid of what? She looked directly into his eyes. Going back. Thunder rolled overhead. Ethan looked down at the ticket again. Something was different. Words were appearing, slowly, letter by letter. As if invisible ink was being exposed. His breath caught. Printed beneath his name, a date. August 17th, 2041. He blinked. Read it again. 2041. 15 years from now. No. No. That's impossible. He rushed back to the counter. Look at this. The ticket clerk examined it. Interesting. Interesting. It says I leave in 2041. It says you depart. Not leave. What's the difference? The old man met his gaze. Everyone leaves, not everyone departs. Ethan felt frustration boiling inside him. Can somebody please explain what is happening? No riddles. No weird speeches. I want answers. The room remained silent. Then, the bearded man stood, walked toward Ethan, and placed something in his hand. A photograph. Old. Bent. Worn from years of being carried. Ethan studied it. It showed a family. A wife. 2 children. And the bearded man, smiling. Happy. Alive. Written on the back were 4 words. Don't miss your stop. The man looked exhausted. I boarded because I wanted answers. I stayed because I wanted more. Eventually, the train became easier than life. And one day, I couldn't remember where home was. Silence. Then, the station lights flickered, once, twice, 3 times. The whistle screamed, louder than ever before. The conductor stepped onto the platform, tall, motionless, face hidden beneath his cap. He raised one gloved hand. Passengers began moving, slowly, orderly, toward the train. Emily hugged her rabbit. It's boarding time. She smiled, maybe you'll find what you're looking for. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Ethan turned toward the exit, toward the storm, toward the road, toward his broken car. Freedom. Normality. Reality. He could leave. Right now. Forget this place ever existed. Forget the impossible ticket. Forget Emily. Forget the missing passengers. Forget everything. Then, the speakers crackled one final time. Static hissed. The voice spoke, clear, cold, deliberate. Final boarding call. A pause. Then, passenger Ethan Carter. Your journey is ready to begin. The conductor slowly turned his head, looking directly at Ethan. Waiting. Not moving. Not speaking. Simply waiting. For a choice. And somewhere deep inside, Ethan realized something terrifying. Part of him wanted to board. End of chapter 3.
Chapter 4. The tunnel between moments. The whistle echoed across the platform. Long, low, patient, waiting. Rain dripped from the edge of the station roof. Steam curled from beneath the train's wheels. Passengers boarded quietly. No panic, no rush, no hesitation, as if they had done this countless times before. As if this was merely another stop, another destination, another night. Ethan stood motionless, ticket clenched tightly in his hand. His heart pounded. He could still leave. The forest was behind him. His car was somewhere beyond the trees. Morning would come. The storm would pass. Life would continue. The divorce, the unemployment, the loneliness, the uncertainty, all of it would still be waiting. But at least it would be real. At least it would make sense. Then he heard Emily's voice. Soft, gentle, almost sad. People only leave when they're ready. He looked down. Emily stood near the carriage steps, holding her stuffed rabbit, smiling, waiting. For what? She shrugged. To stop running. Before Ethan could answer, the conductor lifted his gloved hand. The station speakers crackled. 30 seconds. The doors would close soon. The opportunity would vanish. Ethan stared at the train, at the glowing windows, at the passengers, at the impossible ticket. And suddenly, he realized something. He had spent months asking himself one question. What if my life had gone differently? What if I had fought harder, loved better, taken different risks, made different choices? Tonight, he might finally get answers. Slowly, almost against his own will, he climbed aboard. The door shut behind him, with a heavy, metallic click. Silence. The interior of the carriage was beautiful, older than anything Ethan had expected. Polished mahogany walls, brass lamps casting warm amber light, red velvet seats, luggage racks lined with worn leather suitcases. Everything looked frozen in time. Passengers sat quietly, some reading books, some staring out windows, some whispering to themselves. No one acknowledged him. No one seemed surprised. The train lurched, barely noticeable, then began moving. Ethan sat down. The station outside drifted away, slowly disappearing into the rain. And within moments, it was gone. Only darkness remained. Miles of darkness. Nothing else. No trees, no roads, no towns, no moon, no stars. Only blackness. As though the train traveled through an empty universe. Emily sat across from him, rabbit in her lap. First trip, Ethan. Apparently, it gets easier. You've been here before? She nodded. A lot. How many times? Emily thought for a moment. 23. Ethan blinked. You're 8 years old. She smiled. Am I? Before he could respond, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied. A man seated nearby suddenly stood, middle-aged, wearing a business suit. Sweat covered his forehead. No, not again. Passengers ignored him. He rushed toward the window, hands shaking, and Ethan looked outside. At first, he saw only darkness. Then, images, brief, flickering, like memories projected onto fog. A kitchen, a family dinner. Children laughing, a wife smiling. The businessman pressed his hand against the glass. Tears streamed down his face. I should have stayed. I should have stayed. The scene changed. Now an office. Late at night. Computer screens glowing. Phone vibrating. 30 missed calls. The man collapsed into a seat, covering his face. I missed her birthday. I missed every birthday. Emily. That's his moment. What? Everyone has one. The moment they wish they could change. Another passenger stared outside. An elderly woman, watching a hospital room. A teenage boy watched a football field. A young woman stared at a wedding chapel, expressionless. Ethan felt uneasy. What are they seeing? Emily hugged her rabbit. The place they got stuck. The train accelerated. Faster, faster, faster. Then, ahead, a tunnel appeared. Massive, impossible. Its entrance towered above the tracks. Black stone, covered in strange markings. Ancient symbols. Words Ethan couldn't understand. The whistle sounded. Once. Long. Mournful. Passengers lowered their heads. Emily closed her eyes. The train entered. Darkness swallowed everything. Complete darkness. Even the lamps dimmed. And then, voices, whispers, hundreds of them, surrounding him, speaking from nowhere. Fragments, regrets, apologies, promises, confessions. I should have called him. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Please don't leave. Come back. Ethan covered his ears. The voices grew louder. Then, one voice stood apart. Familiar. Painfully familiar. His own. If I disappeared tonight, would anyone notice? His breath caught. No. No. Not possible. He had only thought those words. Never spoken them aloud. Yet the tunnel remembered. The train remembered. Something remembered. The lights returned. Passengers slowly looked up. The tunnel was behind them. Silence settled over the carriage. Emily opened her eyes. Most people cry the first time. Ethan swallowed. What is this place? She looked toward the last carriage, expression changing. Serious now, almost fearful. Don't go back there. Why? Because sometimes. She hesitated. The train shows you someone you're not ready to meet. A cold breeze moved through the carriage. Though no windows were open, no doors had moved. And from somewhere beyond the connecting door, at the very end of the train, came the sound of footsteps. Slow. Measured. Approaching. Then stopping. As if someone was standing on the other side. Waiting. For Ethan. End of chapter 4.
Chapter 5. The Man in the Last Carriage. The footsteps stopped. Silence settled over the carriage. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Almost alive. Ethan stared at the door connecting his carriage to the last one. It was old. Mahogany wood. Brass handle. Frost coated the edges of its small, oval window. As if the air beyond was impossibly cold. Emily hugged her rabbit tighter. Please don't go. Ethan looked at her. You know who's back there? She nodded slowly. Everyone does. Then who is it? Emily lowered her eyes. The person you're trying hardest not to become. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance. Or perhaps, not thunder. Something much larger. Something moving alongside the train, hidden within the darkness beyond the windows. Ethan stood. His ticket remained clenched in his hand. Sweat dampened his palms. Passengers avoided looking at him. The businessman who regretted missing his daughter's birthdays stared at the floor. The elderly woman closed her eyes. Even the bearded man from the station had gone pale, as though they already knew what waited behind that door. Ethan swallowed, then stepped forward. One step, then another. The train rocked gently beneath his feet. The brass handle felt freezing cold. He hesitated. A voice whispered behind him. Some answers cost more than questions. It was the bearded man. When I opened that door, I stopped sleeping. Ethan turned. What did you see? The man smiled sadly. Myself. 20 years older. Completely alone. Still riding. Silence. Ethan looked back toward the door. He had spent months avoiding mirrors. Avoiding phone calls. Avoiding old friends. Avoiding the apartment that still smelled faintly of his ex-wife's perfume. He had become very good at running. Maybe too good. Slowly, he opened the door. A rush of icy air swept over him. The last carriage was empty. At least, at first glance. Rows of red velvet seats stretched into dim shadows. Brass lamps flickered overhead. One suitcase rested neatly beside a window. A coat hung over the back of a seat. Someone was here. Then Ethan saw him, at the far end of the carriage, sitting alone, looking out into the darkness. Hands folded calmly. Older. Perhaps 47. Maybe 48. Gray streaks touched his hair. His shoulders seemed heavier. His face more tired. More worn. But there was no doubt. It was Ethan, 15 years older. The older Ethan turned slowly, as if he had been expecting him, and smiled. Not happily, not warmly, but knowingly. You finally boarded. Ethan couldn't breathe. No. No. This isn't happening. Older Ethan nodded. I said the same thing. Who are you? You already know. This is impossible. So is the station. So is the tunnel. So are tickets printed 15 years into the future. Ethan stood frozen. Older Ethan gestured toward an empty seat. Sit. We don't have much time. Reluctantly, Ethan sat down. The train hummed softly beneath them. Darkness rushed endlessly outside. Older Ethan sighed. You think this train carries people? It doesn't. It carries decisions. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? The station appears to people standing at crossroads. People who believe their lives are over. People desperate enough to trade certainty for answers. And if they stay, they forget. They stop fighting. They keep riding. Because the train offers something addictive. What? Older Ethan looked down. Possibilities. He pointed toward the windows. Outside, scenes flickered. Different versions of Ethan. Ethan becoming wealthy. Ethan reconciling with his wife. Ethan starting a family. Ethan becoming successful. Ethan laughing, happy, whole. Lives he never lived. Dreams never reached. What are these? Choices. Roads you didn't take. Ethan watched silently. I stayed because I wanted to see more. Just one more possibility. Just one more life. Just one more version where things worked out. And then, older Ethan smiled bitterly. Years passed. I forgot my apartment number. My mother's voice. My favorite song. The smell of coffee in the morning. I forgot bruises. Friends. Faces. Everything. Except regret. Silence. Then Ethan asked quietly, so why are you telling me this? Older Ethan finally looked directly at him. Because tonight, you still have a chance to leave. I don't.
The train suddenly shook violently. Lights flickered. Passengers screamed in distant carriages. The speakers crackled. Static hissed. Then, the familiar voice returned. Calm, mechanical, unemotional. Attention passengers. Approaching final destination. Older Ethan stood abruptly. Fear crossed his face for the first time. No, not yet. We still have time. What destination? Ethan asked. Older Ethan looked toward the front of the train, expression grim. The place where passengers stopped remembering who they were. The whistle screamed, long, piercing, painful. And ahead, beyond the windows, a station slowly emerged from the darkness. Massive, silent, filled with thousands of waiting passengers, standing perfectly still, not speaking, not moving, simply waiting, as though they had been waiting, for years, for decades, perhaps, forever. Older Ethan stepped backward, voice trembling. Whatever happens, don't get off. Don't listen if they call your name. And above all, he paused, eyes filled with sorrow. If you ever see me again, run. The train began slowing. The station speakers crackled one final time, and a cold voice echoed through every carriage. Welcome to the end of the line. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The final announcement. The train slowed. Metal groaned. Steam hissed beneath the wheels. Outside the windows, the station grew larger. Endless. Ancient. Its platforms stretched farther than Ethan could see. Thousands of people stood waiting. Men, women, children, old, young. Some dressed in modern clothes, others wearing fashions decades out of date. They stood perfectly still. Not talking, not moving, not blinking. Simply waiting. As though they had forgotten what it meant to leave. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. What is this place? Older Ethan stared through the glass, his face pale, expression hollow. The end of the line. Nobody knows its real name. Passengers gave it one. What happens here? Older Ethan swallowed. They stopped remembering. The train jolted. Passengers shifted nervously. Several began crying. A woman whispered her husband's name repeatedly. An elderly man stared at his hands, as if trying desperately to remember whose hands they were. Emily held her rabbit tightly. Silent. Afraid. Then, the station speakers crackled. Static hissed. And the familiar voice returned. Calm. Mechanical. Cold. Attention passengers. Thank you for traveling with the Midnight Line. We have arrived. Passengers wishing to surrender their journey may now disembark. The carriage became silent. A few passengers stood, slowly, almost sleepwalking, moving toward the doors. Older Ethan grabbed Ethan's arm. Don't watch them. Why? Because they'll look happy. Ethan ignored him. He looked. And older Ethan was right. They were smiling. Peaceful. Relieved. As if stepping onto the platform would finally free them from pain, from regret, from disappointment, from loss. One woman laughed softly. A businessman sighed with contentment. An old man whispered, I can finally rest. They stepped off the train.
And immediately, their expressions changed. Confusion, then emptiness. Eyes unfocused. Memories fading. They wandered into the crowd, becoming indistinguishable from everyone else. Waiting. Forever. Ethan stepped backward. Oh my God. Older Ethan nodded. That's why I stayed. I was terrified. I thought I could outsmart the train. Learn its secrets. Escape later. But every trip takes something. What? Older Ethan hesitated. Then answered. Memories. Ethan froze. What did you lose? Older Ethan smiled sadly. My mother's laugh. My wedding day. The face of my best friend. The sound of my father's voice. His eyes glistened. And yesterday, I forgot my own birthday. Silence. Heavy. Painful. Then, the carriage door opened. The conductor entered. For the first time, up close. Tall, perfect posture. Dark uniform untouched by dust. White gloves. Cap pulled low. Face hidden beneath shadow. He stopped before Ethan. Motionless, waiting. Then spoke. Voice calm. Human. Yet somehow, wrong. You are not scheduled to remain. Ethan stared. Who are you? The conductor tilted his head. I keep time. I keep passengers. I keep promises. Did you create this place? No. I inherited it. Can it be destroyed? No. Can people escape? Occasionally. The conductor looked toward older Ethan. But some remained too long. Older Ethan lowered his eyes. The conductor turned back toward Ethan. You still possess something valuable. What? Hope. Ethan frowned. That's valuable. It is the only currency accepted here. Silence. Then the conductor stepped aside, pointing toward another door. At the end of the carriage. Small. Unremarkable. Almost hidden. One train, one journey, one choice. You may stay. You may seek answers. You may ride forever. Or, you may leave, and live with uncertainty. Ethan looked at older Ethan. What happens to him? The older man smiled. Maybe I'll always be here. Maybe I disappear. Maybe I'm only what you become if you stay. I honestly don't know anymore. Ethan's throat tightened. Come with me. Older Ethan laughed softly. I tried. Many times. But this train doesn't let passengers reclaim lost years. Outside, the whistle sounded. Departure approaching. The speakers crackled. Final announcement. Passenger Ethan Carter. Decision required. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Older Ethan stepped back. Tears forming in his eyes. Go. Please. Remember who you are. Remember that broken people still have futures. Remember that regret only wins if you let it. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Ethan closed his eyes. Thought of his mother. His apartment. Coffee on Sunday mornings. Bad movies. Old friends. The possibility that tomorrow might still surprise him. 2 seconds. 1. He ran. Through the small door. Light exploded around him. Warm. Blinding. Then, silence. Birds chirping. Sunlight touched his face. Ethan opened his eyes. He was sitting inside his Honda Civic, parked beside an empty road. Morning. Clear skies. No rain. No station. No tracks. No train. The engine started immediately, as if it had never broken down. Ethan laughed, almost cried, then shook his head. A dream. It had to be. Just stress. Exhaustion. Nothing more. He reached for his coffee cup and froze. Resting on the passenger seat was a yellow train ticket. Passenger, Ethan Carter. Next departure, 12:13 a.m. tomorrow. Far away, somewhere beyond the trees, a whistle echoed, waiting patiently. For another night. For another choice. For another passenger. End of Season 1.